Hello, IMVUZers. Roy here, hanging out in Pink Delusions. It's a public room hosted by Kyle. He is right here between me and the generic sweater-wearing slasher here. Today I'll be making a simple t-shirt. I'm going to start by using Medibang Paint on my Android tablet to create my design. I like using my tablet for drawing characters and other simple designs. I am drawing a cute cartoon cow because, well, I like them. I find using the sharp pen tool the easiest for doing the line art like I am doing right now. I'm going to start with a rough sketch. If you notice, I actually use multiple layers. I was having issues here with my stylus, so some of the lines were not coming out as intended, but since this is a rough sketch, I can always go back and change things later. There is a layer option here to reduce the transparency. This makes it easier to create a new layer to trace over and make a cleaner line art version. It can be good to sometimes vary what line thickness you have or even the transparency, especially for smaller details such as the udder here. I also make use of the eraser tool to help clean up the line art more, especially these smaller areas like this tail here. Now that I'm happy with the line art, I'm going to start to color in the character. I do this on a layer underneath the line art so the color does not bleed into it. For coloring, I often like to use the wet watercolor brush with a low opacity. I find it blends softly while giving a slight edge of brush strokes. Since this is a cartoon, I'm not going to get too detailed, but a little shading and color differentiation makes it have more depth as an art piece. I really enjoy coloring on my tablet like this. I sped up this portion more since I am just using the watercolor tool to finish filling in the areas. Now, another tool I like is actually called the stipple pen. I find this is great for adding a bit of texture. I usually like to set the spacing up a little bit higher so that it's not piling up too much in one area and keeping the opacity low as well, just to give it a softer effect. Now, to really make this pop, I went back to the sharp pen tool and started to add some highlights in white. I also decided to go back and add some brown lines around the spots and to clean them up a little bit more as well. Decided to add a bit of grass too, and a little heart. Had a little difficulty drawing that for some reason. Now to put on IMVU, I decided on a mesh already that I made with textures, and I imported my artwork over from my tablet. So heading over to create mode, this is the mesh as it is without anything else added. This mesh uses an opacity for the logo, so one of the first things I want to do is to turn this into an opacity map. I'm just going to quickly sharpen the image, and then I'll see how it lies as is. And I'll export it and create its own folder as well. So I'll go over to the logo area here and remove the opacity that's already on it. And I'll go look for the image that I saved. And I'll hit apply changes. And it's not quite where I want it to sit. Part of that has to do with the shape of the mesh itself. So I'll make some adjustments back at Gimp. So I'll move the image up a little bit and use this handy tool called Warp Transform. In the version of Gimp I'm using, it's located in the toolbox. It allows you to manually adjust portions of the image which can correct distortions. And I just put on the updated image, and that looks a lot more like how I wanted it to be. Now there are a couple different ways to create an opacity map. One way is to use the color to alpha. Using this, I removed all the white on that layer. This usually works better with strongly contrasted images or for use with blending. So I'll save this layer for later, just to kind of show the alpha layer. One of the simplest ways to make an opacity map is to use the magic wand tool. With this, I can select all of the outer white. With this selection, I can create a new layer and fill that all with black. With opacity maps, the blacks are where the image will be transparent. Now I can also do the reverse by creating a new layer and inverting the selection so that I can fill that with white. White is where the image will show. You can create this all in one layer, but I find it a little bit easier to be able to adjust things. So I'll export this version as a GIF, which is the lowest KBS impact. So I upload the map into this spot here, press apply changes, and you can see now the image has a cutout. There is a little bit of a white border, but that can be adjusted. One way is to make the outside all a similar color as the outline, such as the black here. And I'll just duplicate this layer, try and fill in all the small areas there. And also use the paint tool just to fill in any areas that I might have missed there. I also always test things quite frequently in the client. And I think it's a good idea just to make sure you're always on the right track. For the t-shirt, it came with this texture as the front, which I already made up. But for this shirt, I don't want it to be black, so I'm going to recolor it. There are a lot of ways to recolor it, but one of the ways I like to do is with layers. I'm thinking I'm going to do this one in pink. Using the layer options, I set the pink layer to screen so you can still see the shadows underneath, and the pink makes the whole image lighter as well. Some of the shirt details were a little hard to see, so I duplicated the main layer there. And just to mess around with it, you could use soft light. I'm going to probably set it back to screen so that it's lighter again. There we go. And I can export that as a separate thing in the same folder. And now trying on the front texture just to see how it looks. I feel like it still needs the highlights to show a little bit more. I just duplicated the screen layers again just to help bring out the highlights a bit more. And for the cow, I'm going to put the outline layer around a bit more pink just to kind of blend things together a bit more. Layers are always great to make a few adjustments so you can get things looking to exactly how you want. I want to add some text, so I'm just going to blob in some dark, almost black here. I'll need to add the text to the alpha layer, so I'll import the opacity map I made before. And I'm using the pen tool to carefully write out the word moo. And I end up making a few more adjustments by trying it on and moving things around a bit. I'll need to make the back texture match the front, so I'll do the same process that I did for the front one. That includes adding the screen layer of the pink, as well as the other ones. So I'm just going to copy from there again. For some reason, the recording equipment messes with the ability to rearrange the layers or to copy and move them around, so it's a little bit easier sometimes to just open up a new file or to copy and paste it again. And of course, for the back texture, I export as its own file. JPEGs are generally a lot lighter weight than the PNGs. Just make sure that you select them at the higher quality so that you don't get any artifacts. Recoloring textures is fine, but I want to add a few more enhancements to the texture. So I'm going to start by adding a wrinkle here. I actually use mouse when I'm on my PC, so I just sort of blob in a bit of black and white and then use the smudge tool to help kind of ease things into place. I set this layer to soft light and use the warp transform tool to adjust things a little bit more. I test the texture in create mode and add a few more adjustments. Another great way to make wrinkles is to use the paintbrush, a nice soft one, and to adjust the aspect ratio. Using the warp transform helps me adjust things manually, and I'll duplicate, flip, and adjust it so it's not too symmetrical. For the shadows, I duplicated that layer and inverted the colors. I'll move that slightly a bit underneath the white and warp transform a bit there and set that layer to soft light as well. To adjust the contrast of the wrinkles, I'm going to use the unsharp mask and just manually look at it until I feel like it looks crisp enough. A few more adjustments and a quick test. Also remember to repeat the process for the back. I'm going to add a bit of highlights along the top here, a bit more shading. And this can take a little bit of work. Sometimes it's good to look at a reference before you really know how the wrinkles will lie. You can even look at your own shirts for inspiration. I think the top highlighting there was a little bit much, so I adjusted the opacity as well as trying to make it a bit more seamless. With the t-shirt finish, now I have to make the icon for it. So once I get the angle I want, I press print screen. And I open up my existing layered icon file. It's good to have a sort of look to your icon so that customers can recognize it. I'll press File, Create from Clipboard, and that will paste the image that I copied earlier from the print screen. And I'll select the area of the image that I want to use for the icon. Image selected, I press Control C, and now I'll make a new layer, press Control V, and adjust the size so that it fits within the frame. You do not have to show the full product, but it's good to get the central focus, which is the cow here. I also like to use sharpen to help make the image look a bit clearer. And to make the icon have a bit more depth, I'm going to duplicate the layer, set that layer to multiply, and then add a layer mask in full black. Now using the white brush on the mask layer, I can paint in where I want the dark layers to show. I just like to add in a little bit where the shadow would fall, just a little bit to contour to help show the shape of the mesh better. It's best not to overpaint your icons because you don't want to mislead the customer at all. And I also use the blend tool a little bit just to help soften the edges that I painted in. And instead of using a eraser, you actually will use black to help clean things up, and that will make the areas transparent again. And again, I like to use a smudge tool just to kind of soften these edges a bit. Since I use the mouse, I don't really have the ability to use pen brush opacity. Holding shift actually lets you drag these lines like I do. I find that helps keep things a little bit straighter. After a few more adjustments and adjusting the icon, I can upload it here, add a nice product name, set a decent profit there, and don't want that derivable. And of course, add some relevant tags. I always like to add a little description before submitting it through to peer review. It doesn't always have to be much, but just a little word of whatever. And always remember to hit publish. Peer review can take a while, but as soon as you hit publish, you can actually wear that in a chat room. A good way to advertise your new creations is to actually stream your outfits onto the feed. So first you have to do is make an outfit featuring your new creation. And you can find a nice room and pose and then try to frame your shot well. And make sure not to use any brand named things since they are technically against the terms of service. Now, since my product hasn't actually gone through to peer review yet, I will actually get a little error if I try to stream this now. After chatting with my friends for a little bit, my product passed through peer review, so I can now stream a photo of it. I'm also going to get Kyle here in frame, and just take a little photo like that, and put it on the stream. Now switch tabs and go over to IMVU next. And click on my icon to go to my profile here. Then I can select my image to add a caption. You can add something here about your product. I'm just going to put down something basic. And there are some tips on how to make a basic t-shirt from start to finish. I hope you learned something. I definitely had fun doing it. It's always good to have fun with your creations, even if it is just something silly. And you can always chat with your friends too. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed and perhaps even learned something new. Happy creating!